Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So we've been talking a lot lately about some mistakes I've made over the years when it comes to decluttering and purging my closet, and also some mistakes I've made with regard to just wanting to build a more sustainable wardrobe. So it was funny, I was watching during the editing process the purge video, and I made the comment that I could think of right off the top of my head 3 items of clothing I had regretted decluttering. And in hindsight, as I started thinking, it was like, actually, I can think of about 50 things I regret decluttering. So it inspired me to actually go upstairs into my decluttering bin and start pulling things out to see, are these really items I want to declutter? So today we're going to walk through those items because I was able to rescue quite a few items from the chopping block. It's probably going to be no big surprise that I mentioned this saddlebag purse here. I talked about this extensively in my previous video, but I'm so glad I got over my attitude about this quote unquote cheap bag from Forever 21. Bought this years ago when I was still purchasing fast fashion. And honestly, I just kind of developed this, like I said, bad attitude towards this bag, thinking I'm too good for this. This is a cheap bag. If I wear it, I'm cheap. So I wasn't wearing it. It was on the verge of being decluttered. And I'm so happy that I just changed my perspective about this bag. The fact that I actually love it. Who cares what the price tag is? And frankly, it's lasted me now about 6 years, which is saying something for a cheap $25 synthetic bag. This next one, I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but in addition to having a decluttering bin, I also have a bag dedicated to clothes that I'm going to send in to be recycled via the Take Back program, which is a fantastic program. But I remember distinctly why this clutch, genuine leather from Coach, was on the chopping block. So in my other video in which I talk about mistakes I've made in pursuit of a sustainable wardrobe, I fell into the trap of thinking, if I want to have a minimal-ish wardrobe, I can only have one version of one thing. So I have a sustainably made neutral clutch. So it was, well, I can't possibly have 2, right? So because this one probably wasn't sustainably made, I don't know, maybe it was, but in my mind I was thinking if I have to choose one or the other, I need to choose the sustainable one, therefore this has got to go. Now, why in the world I did not make the decision to try to purge this? Like, why am I just sending this to the recycling bin of clothing? Instead of trying to get you use out of it or offering it up to somebody else, like on the resale market for them to use. The only thing I can think of is one thing I'm definitely guilty about is getting into these phases where I just want stuff out of my sight. So for me personally, I've noticed that this tends to be fueled quite a bit by like hormones, in the sense that I become very sensitive to too many things. Like I can't have clutter around the house. I can't have clutter in my closet normally. And so when I'm feeling hormonal, I'm just like extra sensitive to stuff. But I'm glad I pulled it out of the bag because it has this really fun, like crocodile print texture to it, which I think is just something unique that adds a nice twist to something as simple and minimal as a neutral clutch. Speaking of things that were in my to be recycled bag is actually something else I'm equally as embarrassed to admit, but it is a pair of handcrafted, ethically made leather shoes. In my defense, I think the reason why I just wanted to chuck these is because mules in general are just a shoe that I find hard to style, because I've noticed, especially when it comes to like a warm weather sandal, I definitely like something more delicate. Every time I tried to style these, I just felt bottom heavy. They felt chunky and clunky on my feet. And I was probably thinking like, oh, you know, they they just kind of look a little bit worn, right? Like, who would want these? And once again, don't want to deal with it, throwing them in the bag of items to be recycled, because that recycling program does take back shoes. So I brought these out to try to give them a second life. I'm going to try to restyle them in the summer and spring in a way that makes more sense. Probably for me, like, shoes like this are something I would wear with like a wide leg jean instead of trying to style them with a skirt or dress. So we'll see how it goes. This next item, I think, is the last that I rescued from the recycled clothing / shoes bag. And it's another one that I'm just like, literally, when I pulled this out of the bag, I had totally forgotten about it, but I audibly said, girl, like, what were you doing? And it is just a basic V-neck t-shirt from Gap. This is organic cotton, so it checks that box. I can tell you the reason why I wanted this out of my sphere is because, God forbid, it was from a brand that's considered to be fast-ish fashion, right? So it's not a brand that's ethically made. I don't know what Gap's paying their workers, probably not very well, in the manufacturing process of their clothing. So therefore, I felt like, well, if I have this in my space, it's conveying this message about who I am as a conscious consumer, and I don't want it in my sphere. Like, I want a better t-shirt that's just sustainable and ethically made and made by people who are paid properly. And those are all fantastic things, right? Like, as I acquire new clothing, that's what I want to aspire to when it comes to my purchases. But again, it's like, I don't solve that problem by just throwing this shirt away, right? So I'm happy to have this back in my collection because it's going to look super cute with jeans. I can style it with leggings for my walks during warmer weather. There are a million different ways I can get use out of this shirt, which I am now happy to do. As I've mentioned before, one of the other issues I got tripped up about, or on rather, when it came to, I want a sustainable wardrobe. I want it to be full of things that bring me joy, that I wear like 10 times a month. And if I don't, it's got to go. Definitely include this skirt here. Oh my goodness. Okay. First of all, like, this was a total nod to the whole Carrie Bradshaw moment, right? That I think most of us enjoyed. Years ago, I was writing the society column for the Pittsburgh Trib. So my job was literally to go to all these wonderful events, write about who was there, what was the food being served, like what was the vibe of the party. So my wardrobe at the time consisted of very party-esque type clothing, things I needed to wear literally on the job. And again, in one of my frenzied purges, it was like, well, I don't write that column anymore. My husband and I live in the middle of the national forest in the mountains. Therefore, I'm not wearing this 10 times a month anymore. It must go. I love this skirt. I don't care if I wear this skirt once every 5 years. I want it in my space. I love everything about it. In fact, I recently styled it in a what to wear when you have nothing to wear video, and I love the look that I came up with. It just goes to show that truly, just because you are not wearing something frequently, or it's not something you've worn in years, it doesn't always mean that you have to get rid of it. And when we just frantically declutter, purge over and over and over again because we're not wearing something right now, it robs us of the ability to allow our style to evolve and grow, right? Like, it kind of cuts us off from being able to, somewhere down the road, reimagine a piece that we loved, styling it and wearing it in a way that we are going to love again. And more importantly, when we do that knee-jerk reaction to decluttering, as we've talked about before, oftentimes we find ourselves a year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 months, whatever, down the road, repurchasing that same item because it was like, oh my gosh, actually, I could really use that. Or, oh my gosh, I actually really loved that item. I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it. And now we find ourselves spending money on a purchase that isn't necessary had we thought through the process of something we're trying to declutter. So I mentioned before the decision I had made to flip from a more kind of scattered, colorful closet to neutral colors, which, believe me, I love. I think in my heart of hearts, I will always love a neutral closet. However, also fueling that decision was the message I started getting from watching YouTube videos, reading blogs, seeing Instagram posts, whatever, was that somehow color equated cheapness in the wardrobe. So I'm sure all of you have heard, various influencers. In fact, I'm sure I've said it too. Like, if you want a quiet luxury wardrobe, lean into neutrals. They look more expensive. They look more luxurious. They look more sophisticated. And while I think that that has merit, I also think that it's ridiculous to assign a blanket statement to the value of a piece of clothing based on what color it is. That's what was fueling my decision to purge this cute little vintage sundress from my collection, because I developed a snotty little attitude towards it because, again, it dared exist in a rainbow of bold colors. But here's the thing. I also am almost positive it's handmade, because when I look at the seams, when I look at just the structure of the dress, there's no tag in it. It just appears like it was handcrafted. And to me, like, knowing now how much I value something that was actually made intentionally with someone's love, care, their talent, and also their hands, it's like, girl, what were you thinking? Like, why would you get rid of this? Also, surprise, surprise, I've now found that I'm being drawn a little bit more towards adding color in my wardrobe, in particular with reds. So this is something I'm kind of feeling out when I want to embody a pop of unexpectedness into my wardrobe. Okay, guys, so that'll do it for some recent rescues from my decluttering bin, also my recycle bag of clothing and shoes and accessories. But I also hope it inspired you to go back through your closet, especially if you have like a designated decluttering bin, or you've got things for sale on Poshmark or Depop or whatever, kind of like just reevaluate why you're getting rid of that item, why you think you have to get rid of it, because you might find that there's some potential in some items that were on your chopping block. But in any event, thank you guys so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you're having a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.